Hello YouTube, welcome to Let's Talk. I am Sharmon Shaw. I'm a senior undergraduate psychology student majoring in Christian counseling at Liberty University. Today I want to talk about a subject that affects us as parents, but especially it has to do with the challenges of raising our boys. Today's topic is fathers man up, not your boys. What I mean is fathers often make that statement to their sons when their son is dealing with maybe a difficult situation, might be a crisis, something that's causing them frustration, and as the father interacts with the son, there could be three reasons why fathers make that statement. Maybe one, they're not sure how to handle the situation. Two, they don't feel like dealing with the situation at that time. And three, they just really don't understand that they are the adult and the child is the child. So when we say stuff like that, especially to our boys, we're adding great pressure onto their plate. They're still kids. Their brains are still developing. They have enough things to deal with as far as school is concerned, and their place is to learn and to grow and be a child. And we as parents need to take our place and stop dumping our responsibilities that is for us to do on our kids. We're causing them great stress and anxiety and anger. And there's also an increase of violence amongst our boys because of the way that we raise them. That is a critical factor. Now, that's not to say that after we've been a good parent, we've done everything healthy as far as raising our kids. We showed no abuse or any violence. We loved our kids. We disciplined. That doesn't mean necessarily that our kids are not prone to violent behaviors. But I believe that those factors would decrease the chance that they will become violent individuals in our society. So we need to understand that there is a crisis in masculinity today. We need to know why boys do the things that they do. We need to understand that boys are different than girls. There are 7 steps to raising emotionally and spiritually healthy sons. There are unique things boys need from their mothers and fathers. And lastly, we need to know why emotions are significant in raising boys. Not long ago, the tragedy at Columbine High School was compounded by the fact that it was only one of a series of violent acts. One of the common threads of that recent school shooting was that every murderer was a boy. These tragedies are merely one indicator that these are difficult times to be a boy and to raise them in a healthy way. The starting place of raising boys is to understand their uniqueness. In the past few years, studies have shown that being a boy has been hazardous to their health. Pastor Chuck Swindoll, who has written many books for parents and children, stated that how we raise our children is one of the greatest impacts on our society. New research shows that boys are doing worse in school than in the past. Some of the challenges of growing up male is they're confused from culture's mixed messages about expectations of how they should be and what it is they should be doing. Our culture today glorifies violence, and to the point where boys are able to disconnect from their emotions. I've seen many true stories over and over again on the Investigation Discovery Channel where young boys are able to disconnect from their emotions when they're committing a crime of violence and murder, where they don't feel any guilt, they don't feel empathy, they don't feel any sorrow, which we would call psychopathic behaviors. So it's critical that we be careful what we say and how we model our behavior around our boys, because it really, today it seems it really is having a very negative impact on the relationships with other people, school, their emotions, every aspect of their being. The crisis of masculinity is that infant boys receive fewer acts of affection from their mothers. Boys are talked to less by their parents and for shorter durations. Boys take longer to sit, stand, and talk, and less positive responses when crying. For instance, when a child has an injury or they're dealing with something that's upsetting them, we as parents are quick to respond to girls than boys. Fathers often tell their boys, "Man up, suck it up, be a man. Crying is for sissies. No pain, no gain. Are you a wimp or a mouse?" I want to say to fathers that I know you might believe you are helping your child when you say that, but you really are not. So if you are saying that to them, now is the time to stop it. Because studies have shown that when we make negative comments to our sons, that they are 7 times more likely to be admitted to mental juvenile institutions. There are 200 genetic diseases that affect only boys. 600% of higher incidents of work-related accidents occur amongst males. The suicide rate is 4 times higher for men. The life expectancy is 9 years less than women. 99% of prisoners who die on death row are male. I think that we really need to understand the uniqueness of boys so that we will know how to deal with them and interact with them in a positive way. First, understand that there are developmental differences between boys and girls. They speak, they learn, they socialize, they're more competitive than girls, and these may occur during their early, middle, and late developmental stages. There are also physiological differences that seem logical. Boys have testosterone and girls have estrogen. There are also neurological differences, which is very important. Their brain develops and functions differently than girls. The male brain is wired for spatial relationships than many emotional relationships. I say that because as males get older, late teens, and they grow up as adults, and they interact with the opposite sex and they're intimate with a woman, we as women tend to be more emotional in our emotions than males. And we can't figure out why men don't understand how we feel or what we're going through. And it's because they don't think the way that we do. The frontal lobe of the brain, which controls cognitive functions related to social development, develop more slowly in the male brain than the female brain. The female brain has more gray matter in the brain that supports active thinking. We immediately think on our feet. We can multitask and we take care of situations differently than males. And we get frustrated and yell at them, why aren't you moving and acting on this situation? It's because we as females, we use both sides of the brain more than males. Men's tend to be more lateralized, where they either use the left or right side hemisphere of the brain. They can only do one task at a time, and they tend to do it at a slower pace. So when we want something done from our sons or our boyfriends or husbands, and we get frustrated because they're not moving quickly when we ask them to do something, they're not able to handle many directions and multitask like we do. So if we understand that, we can understand, especially children who have ADHD, we have to give them one direction at a time, and it has to be short, concise, and very understandable what it is that we want them to do. And we can eliminate a lot of our frustrations if we understand that. The left-right side of the brain is connected by a membrane called corpus callosum, which are bundles of nerve fibers. So females have a larger corpus callosum, which helps us to be better at multitasking than men. The male brain system is more emotionally fragile than females, believe it or not. Though they, have their male egos and they act like nothing bothers them, but they typically are more emotionally fragile than females. Men choose to avoid emotional stimulation. Men are viewed as conflict of warriors more than women. The male testosterone compels them to take more physical risks. It has to do with their social, professional risks of climbing corporate ladders, and they dominate fields of play. So if we understand that that's how the male brain functions, we can understand how to interact differently with our boys than our girls. The emotional differences between girls and boys is that girls are more emotional, and from the time that they are little girls, they're encouraged to talk more about their emotions. Boys are taught to stuff, repress, deny, suppress, and ignore their emotions. It's not considered masculine to talk about your feelings. And we wonder why many males are so violent and angry, and they're walking time bombs, and they have psychopathic and sociopathic behaviors, because that is the message that they've been taught interacting with their parents. For instance, a girl might get dumped the night before prom or dance, they will cry, they'll talk to their mom, they'll write in their diary, talk to a friend, and they become depressed. Well, boys, they might tend to hit the wall, they'll swear, they'll kick and throw things, they'll get in their car and speed to express their anger and disappointment. So if we understand the differences with girls and boys, then we'll understand how they react and deal with their emotions. One of the greatest gifts as parents we can give our sons is understanding the heart. We need to help our son understand the importance of emotions. We need to give them an outlet. We need to establish trust and understand that they could come to us and talk to us, and that we'll take time and listen, not giving advice, but helping them to problem solve and figure out a solution to their problems. But basically, we really just need to listen, not brush them off and become so busy that we don't have time to listen to our boys. We need to model healthy expressions of our God-given emotions. So we need to understand that it is healthy to be angry, but it's not healthy to cuss people out, throw things, destroy property, assault and attack someone. We need to teach those behaviors to our kids when they're like 2 and 3 years old. Then when they become toddlers and they start interacting with other kids their age and they're learning how to share. But if we don't teach them that and we wait until they, are confronted with problems, they're not going to know how to deal with it. So they become angry and violent. So we as parents have to teach them proper healthy emotions. It's not something that they automatically know. It's something they learn. They model behavior by what they see and by what they hear. So it's just not healthy for kids to be in an environment where there's constantly swearing and arguing and bickering and fighting in the home. And we're saying negative statements to them like, man up, be a man. And they're not even a man. They're still a child. They have no idea how to handle many different situations yet. And like I said, we're just adding too much pressure to our sons to be a man before their time. They grow in stages. So if they're still early adolescent, young teen, they're still not men. We could teach them how to grow into that process, but we can't tell them be a man when they're not men. So that's why I say, fathers, you man up, you take responsibility and do what you need to do as a father, as a man, and let your boys be boys. And you teach them positive emotional behaviors, and you spend time with them and you talk to them and get to know your child and do fun things. Make the time, because this is that time as they're growing that is so crucial. It really will depend on how they will be able to succeed in school, sports, interact with their peers, their teachers, how they'll be able to interact in their intimate relationships, and when they grow up and they get employment and they might get married. There's our stages of healthy development in our kids, and we got to start young when they're little and not wait until they're already 10 years old, because by then, typically by the age of 12, they're pretty much set in their ways. They already have their personality and characteristics intact, so it's kind of hard to shape that child at that age when you didn't start when they were little. We have to model that, we have to model healthy expressions. Again, I say that of our God-given emotions. He gave us emotions so that we know how to react in a healthy way in many different situations we encounter. But as I said, we have to teach that to our kids. We can't expect them to automatically know how to behave and handle their emotions. But it's also not healthy to tell our kids to stop that crying, you're a punk, suppress and deny your emotions. That's not healthy either. So you have to understand that emotions are an important part of what it means to be made in the image of God. Our emotions and our values work together. God, He created a unique system in us, our emotional system. He helps us modify our emotions to meet our needs. And we have to learn to discern the difference between good and evil. And He gives us motivation for growth and change. Our emotions are like a sixth sense. We can sense when things are not right. We can sense when things are right. But we just need to understand how they work together. Throughout the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, God says a lot about emotions. The 4 synoptic gospels shows us the range of emotions that Jesus expressed prior to His death. He was depressed. He was angry. He was in denial. He felt so many emotions until He accepted what His fate was. So our emotions help us to understand ourselves and other people. Our emotions warn us when we're in danger, and it helps us to know when our boundaries are being crossed and violated. Our emotions help us to know what we value and what is important in life. When a person is upset, and as we communicate and listen to them, we can then show compassion and offer a kind word or gesture to help that person. So if we can do that with a friend, another family member, a coworker, church member, how come we as parents oftentimes fail to do that with our kids? I believe it's because we live in a fast-paced society and both parents have to work, and it's even more tough on single parents because you feel like you're just out of time. You just don't have enough time. When you get home from work, you feel like you only have so many hours to get stuff done. But spending a few minutes with your child every day, 10, 15 minutes, not long, would make a difference. Just to hear them and talk to them and show compassion for, things they might be feeling. They might have had a bad day at school or, an altercation with somebody. But that is so important. That really means a lot to our kids, to know that we're there for them every day, to know that we care, to know that they can trust us and come to us and talk to us. We have to build and establish a relationship with our kids just like we do with other people. There are long-term individual consequences for boys who grow up emotionally handicapped. They become impaired emotionally and they don't trust other people. They fail to deal with conflict. It's hard for them to forgive, and they don't know how to manage their anger in healthy ways. The negative downside to that is that they'll tend to be nervous and irritable, sulky and moody, depressed and lonely, impulsive and disobedient, and they'll develop unhealthy and codependent relationships. It'll be hard for them to know themselves and to open up and share how we feel with other people. When we can't understand or communicate our emotions in a positive way, it keeps us from engaging in healthy relationships with other people. Healthy emotional development and the cultivation of emotional intelligence is essential for personal and professional success. What is emotional intelligence? Well, it has to do with our IQ. Many years ago, it was said that if you had a high IQ, that would determine your level of success. If you had a low IQ, then your chances of success were slim. Well, over the years in today's society, those with high IQs now are not necessarily successful. And sometimes those people with low IQs are more successful. But after 20, 30 years of extensive study, the emotional intelligence is more important than our IQ. Emotional intelligence is a compilation of 20 different competencies. Research shows that our EQ, our emotional intelligence, makes up 80 to 92% success on our jobs, in our ministry, and relationships. So our emotional intelligence is more important across a broad spectrum of what is important to us. But how does that relate to raising healthy sons? Well, it's the most critical point of cultivating healthy, godly men. And there are 7 steps for raising emotionally healthy sons, which I'll call CORE, CORE, gifts.